All right. McAfee and Godwin and Ag- Agbeku. Is it William? Anyway. All right. Hello, Godwin.
I mentioned my name.
Yes. So I wanted to find out if you had done the assignment and if there were any challenges you experienced.
Yes, I did it and submitted it. I
Okay.
did it and submitted it. My only challenge was the fact that how do you call it? The screenshot for I even sent the comment. The screenshot for the VS code, it was quite lengthy. So
Mm,
zooming in to get the screenshots. I'm not sure whether you're able even to see something in there, but yeah, that was my only challenge with the screenshot. But the work itself, it was
mhm,
quite lengthy, and
mhm.
as I wrote in my reflection text, it requires that I memorize or I get to know by heart the attributes and the tag names, what is for what, and all that. And but my major challenge was getting the sections to work, the hyperlinks to the sections to work.
All right, sure, no problem.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right. So we are supposed to start CSS today, right? I mean, previously we've been doing HTML, and I think in the first lesson with my colleague going, she mentioned that when you look at the website, right? Take a website like the human body, is like the skeleton, right? The bones that's are within the human body, and then we'll call CSS the skin or the flesh, right? And we have JavaScript as the body functions, moving, breathing, and all the rest. Yeah. So this week, yes, I think we've done a lot with HTML. If you had followed through with the sessions and the assignments, I think, and the over the weekend, the recap Bright had, you should be conversant with HTML. And then it gets exciting. CSS is where you actually see sites come to life. So all the beautiful sites you've been seeing, all the designs, all the colors, and all the animations, most of it is powered by CSS. Um, I just so what is what I want to do? I want to go quickly through the pre-assignment. That's if we have majority of those who want us to go through. If there were any challenges that we can quickly go through before going to CSS today. So today's agenda briefly will be around. Let me share my screen. Uh, sorry, hold on. Just a minute. Okay. So today's agenda will be covering, like I said, CSS. That's introduction to CSS in the box model, what CSS is and how it works, CSS syntax and the selectors, applying the styles, the three main styles of CSS: inline, internal, and external, understanding how the box model works, width and height properties, as well as box sizing property. Um, all right. I'm a huge advocate for CSS. I remember back then when I was just like you, over a year and a year and a half ago, I used to comb the internet looking for projects just to improve on my CSS. And trust me, it gets really, really exciting. Right. So I just want to throw it out there. Has anyone else been, maybe out of curiosity, be researching what CSS is?
Yeah, please. And I've been able to watch some YouTube videos and
Mm,
how they use it to design the websites and all that. Yes.
okay. All right. Anyone else? Anyone else?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, please. I think just a quick one on this. Please, before we proceed to the CSS, I think I have this challenge concerning the attributes and some of the attributes actually.
Mhm.
I've been trying to research on some of them and how they function, but I think the explanation are a bit technical. I don't know how to put it better. They are not simple for, let's say, some of us the beginners. So the comprehension is a bit difficult for us to how they function and all that. So I just want to suggest, maybe, if I don't know if there is any way that they can maybe group some of the attribute, or and then explain them in a layman terms for us to comprehend much easier. I don't know if that will help us.
All right. Sure, no problem. Yes, that can be discussed. Maybe we'll prepare documentation, or maybe at the end of the class, I can just go through the attributes one more time, just for everyone to understand. Is that okay? But
All right.
I'll just go through the assignment. I think just a portion of the assignment, just to help us better grasp the concept. So just give me a second.
Hello.
Hello,
Hello. Please, can you hear me?
hello. Yes, yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Please speak.
And also, I mean, just to also just see how best maybe, I mean, on what Hope said. What I can also just say to that is the Hope. Sometimes what can it can actually help, because one thing I've noticed is that if I just want to chew I'm also struggling to know which of them I need to do. So what I basically do is that since I know the how the, let's say, the attribute or the tag look like, I just go to Google, type it there, and just read it there, and I see, and they will give you how you need to apply it in the code and all that. I think that will make the learning faster than you want to cheat one by one. Trying to learn it one by one will be very difficult. I was trying, but I realized that it not. So when I know that, okay, this is the code ID, I just go to Google, type the code there, the tag there, sorry, and I mean, give me options. It sometimes even suggests how it can be quoted in the quoting. I mean, if you are coding, it can be quoted and all that. So I think that will even help to, I mean, keep them help faster than trying to learn them. Okay, this is the function of this and this is the function of that and all that. That's the one you need, and
Okay.
then you just quickly go and refer to it and come back.
All right. Thank you very much. I think
All
I
right.
will try
Thank you
that.
so much.
Thank you very much. Mm.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen now. We'll just look at just the first portion of the assignment, and then we'll enter into CSS. But I can see I think the majority of you have submitted the assignment. Out of 11, I think 8 of you have, which is quite good. I'll use Let's Learn 9 to review and then grade you on both the first session and then today's assignment. All right. I hope you can all see my screen.
Yes, please.
All right. Excellent. Okay. So as you can see, I have my boilerplate index of HTML code, and just going straight into it, I have I've added a boilerplate code, and then the first one says the navigation bar. So inside the body, create a nav element to hold the navigation bar. Right. Let me just zoom in a bit. I hope the zoom is okay for everyone. Is the zoom okay for everyone? Okay, all right, that's nice. Okay, so it says in the body tag, right? Create a nav element to hold your navigation bar. So I'm just creating my nav element to hold my navigation bar. And inside the nav elements, it says add an unordered list inside the nav elements using the UL tag. Using the UL tag. So inside my nav element, I'm going to create a UL tag to hold the unordered list. And inside the unordered list, I'm supposed to create a list of items inside the unordered list. Each item should contain an anchor tag that links to different sections of your page. For example, home, skills, projects, contacts, about, right? So inside, I'm just going to create a list and then create an anchor tag. And from what we learned last week, remember we said the attribute of the anchor tag is the href. That holds the link you'll be pointing to, right? And in this case, says each list item should contain an anchor tag that links to different sections on your page. So in this case, yes, I'll point home. And I'll just duplicate this. I'll call this skills. I'll call this about. I'll call this contact. Wait. Now, mind you, the instruction said that each list item should contain an anchor tag that links to different sections of your page. So it means that these sections will be within the website landing page or on the same page of your website. So that being the case, to reference a link that is within the website of your page, we typically use the hashtag and then the ID of the section or the name of the section, right? Or the name of the section, which is home. I'll explain further when I get to the section part. So over here, I'll call it skills. Over here, I'll call it about.
Mr. Bernard, are you still on the VS Code? Because I can't see whatever you're typing or inputting in the
Okay.
VS Code.
Can you see now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So where did I drop off so I can go? But anyway, so I was explaining that per the instructions.
Because I wasn't able to get the way you inserted the chief quickly.
Okay. So per the instructions, we started by creating the nav tag or the nav element, right? That was the first step. And then inside the nav element, we're supposed to create an unordered list to hold the anchor tags or the links to the sections of our website. And to do that, the instruction told us to create an unordered list tag. And inside there, sorry, I made a mistake. Great. And inside the unordered list, we're supposed to create a list that will hold the links to the sections on our website. And the sections that was given to us were the home, skills, about, and then contact. So we have these four, right? And I was explaining that from the last session when we were talking about HTML attributes, right? Mentioned that attributes give more description about the tag or the element we are calling. And the attributes that we know for the anchor tag, which represents the hyperlink tag, is the href. And this href attribute helps us to point to the link or point to a hyperlink or point to a link we want to reference. And I just explained that from last week, you could either embed a URL link that will point to a URL link on the website on the internet, or you could reference HTML pages or sections within a single page or your website. And per our instructions, we have sections within the single page or the website you're trying to refer to. And to do that, we start with the hashtag and then the name of the link. Typically, it will be the name of the section or the name of the link, where over here we have home, skills, about, and then contact. When we get to the section, when we get to creating the section, we'll find out why this is important. Typically, this will reference the ID of the section that we'll be creating. If there are any questions over here, I'll open the floor for questions or clarification before I continue. All right, please go ahead. Yes, Hope, please go ahead. Yes, Hope, please go ahead. I'm listening to you.
Hello. Yes, please. I said, please, concerning the hashtag, when I was doing my assignment, I watched some video and using the anchor tag, they didn't put any hashtag around whatever they were referencing. They just left it in the quotation mark. What is the difference between this one and then the one that you will not have any hashtag around it, please?
Okay. You said in the video you watched, they didn't have the hashtag, just had it this
Yes,
way.
please. Yes, please. Yes, please.
Interesting. Okay. I haven't experienced that before because I know that if you want to reference, this hashtag is supposed to represent the ID of the section that you want to go to, right? Like I explained earlier.
Oh,
Two ways. There are two ways of referencing links within your HTML. So it's either the HTML page, which is a different page altogether. So if you had a separate HTML for home, would have been home.html, right? Or if it's a separate section,
okay.
the section within the website, use the hashtag. But that's quite interesting.
All right.
I'll quickly and get
Okay.
back to you on that, if that's okay.
All right, sir. All right, sir.
Okay. All right, let's continue. Good. So number 4 says okay. Let's hold on. Let's see. Let's view this in the browser. Good. So we have our home, we have our skills, we have our about, and we have our contacts. Good.
Hey, please, I can't see anything, or I'm the only one.
Sorry. Can you see now?
Yes, but something is covering it there too,
Something is covering what?
like a pencil sort of. Right now, I can't see anything again.
Wow.
I think it is
Who was
your
speaking?
internet. I think it might be your network. I can see everything.
Yeah. I can also see everything.
Okay.
I see.
All right, no problem.
This network today too.
Okay. Can you see my HTML now?
Yes, I
No,
can
so
see.
Can
maybe
everyone else see my
mine is a
HTML?
different issue. Maybe the network for me. So
Okay. Okay. I mean, yeah, this session is being recorded, so you can always refer to the recording, right?
Okay.
Or we'll have a recap at the end of the lesson.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, good. So the next part says the about section. Now, below the nav element, create a section using the section tag with an ID of about. Add an H2. Okay, so we'll do this one. So we'll create a section tag with an ID attribute of what? About, right? Remember, this about will by all means, like I said, reference this link over here, right? But since we are going asynchronously or chronologically, we can use home first. Sorry, skills first. Okay. Let me just swap these two so that about comes first and then skills comes after. Okay. Now it says that within the section, create an H2 with a text about me. So we'll have an H2 or about me. Right. Good. Now let's see how it looks in the browser. Good. Okay. All right. So ideally, what would happen here is in the browser, if the about was not in the same view as the home element, once you click on about, it will go all the way and reference, like I said, because of the anchor tag, it will reference the about section. Now, I don't know if any of you can see the URL. I don't know if it's too small. But for those who did the assignment, you realize that in the URL, anytime you click on the nav element or the anchor tag, right, you see the attribute in the URL. I don't know if any of you observe that. Please, I need responses from you guys to know that you guys are following. For those who did the assignment, when you clicked on the anchor tag, did you see the URL change with the href we are defined? This one.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay. All right. So I think, yeah, I'll stop here for now and then move into CSS. We'll eventually, as time progresses, we'll style this for it to be our project portfolio, and then we'll understand better how the interactions between the HTML and the CSS work. Is that okay for everyone? Before I move into CSS, I will leave the floor one more time for any questions. Okay. All right. Okay. So, like I started earlier, or I mentioned earlier, CSS is like the skin or the flesh to the human body, as HTML would be the bone or the skeleton to the human body, right? CSS applies design to all the websites that you see, and it gives you that feel or look of those amazing websites you've been seeing, most of them. Some of them are powered by JavaScript as well, which is also another high level or a step above CSS. But we'll delve into that in later lessons, right? Now, CSS simply means cascading style sheets. And as the name suggests, it's for styling the website. Let me just refer to this. Okay, good. So how CSS works is it has to communicate with your HTML document, right? So typically, you will start by creating a separate file for your CSS styles, right? So that's the external CSS way. We also have two other ways, which is the inline CSS and then the internal CSS. Now, I'll start with the inline CSS. For the inline CSS, it happens within the HTML document, so you don't have to go out of the HTML document. And a way to get or to style inline is by adding the style attributes. Remember from last week, we spoke about attributes for HTML elements. Now, one of the attributes for styling is called the style attribute. And for the style attributes for CSS, we typically have the property and then the value, right? So let's say if I wanted to give this navbar that we have created in our HTML, let's say a background color, I would call the background color and give it a value of, let's say, brown, right? And this is an inline way of styling. It comes with the attribute called style, like we discussed from last week. And within it, it has two elements, the property and then the value. In this case, I wanted to give this nav bar or navigation a background color. So I'll call the property called background color, and I'll call the value of the color. Right. Good. So typically that's as simple as it is how CSS works. Now, if I go to my browser, right, you should see the CSS style take effect. I hope you all can see my browser. Anyone?
Please.
Guys, this is supposed to be a very interactive session. If I don't get interaction from you, I'll not understand if you guys have gotten it or not. So please interact with me.
Yeah, we can see
Right.
it.
So
we can see it.
All right, no problem. Okay. So that's the inline way of styling. Now we have another way of styling, which is the internal, and then the third way, which is external. I'll explain those two. But before I explain those two, I'll speak a bit again about the CSS syntax and the selectors. Right. Now for inline CSS, right? Like I said, again, it is the attribute, the property value, the property, and then the value. Right. Now, for internal CSS, which is a bit more different, you typically, in your head tag, right, you will declare a style tag, and then we'll use the selector. So the selector here is referencing your HTML document, the element that you want to select to style. So let me take off the inline. Let me put a comment over here. Sorry. Called internal styling. Okay. So in the same vein, the way I styled the nav the navigation element to give it a background color of brown. I'll call the selector, which is the nav, right, which is the HTML element. And then, like I said, the same thing. I'll give it a background color. I'll call the property, which is background color. And then the value, which is brown. So what happens here is it will reference my HTML document and pick the nav element or the nav selector, right? You can see if you hover over the selector, it tells you selector specificity, which is specifying the selector which is going to apply the CSS styling to. And the same thing, apply the background color and then of brown to it. So when I switch to my browser, you should see the same effect. Can we see that?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
All right. Okay. Any questions up to this point before I move on to the external CSS?
I have a question.
Okay, no problem. Yes, ma'am.
So when you were doing the internal styling,
Yes.
why do you have to name it internal styling?
No, so I just put a comment over here. Okay, I think in the first HTML session we didn't speak about comments. So you can write comments inside your HTML code just to guide you on what you are doing. So it is not part of the code. They are just like
Okay.
additional notes. That's right, exactly. And a way to write comments in HTML is to have like the same ways over here. So the less than sign, the exclamation mark, minus, minus, right? And then you write the comment. So let's say this is an internal CSS style. So whenever you render this in the browser, right, the browser understands that this HTML document has, the HTML tags when it's reading from top to bottom. But then when it gets here, it knows that this is not part of the tags. It's just a comment. So it skips it and doesn't render it in the browser. Is that clear?
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. The simple shortcut to do that is also, if you don't want to go the long way of doing the less than sign, you can write your comment. This is an internal style, and then you hold control and then the / sign. The / sign is what is the same sign together with the question mark sign. So control and then the question mark or / sign. Automatically apply that particular line as a comment. Is that clear?
Hello.
Please.
Hello.
I want to ask a question.
All right, I'm listening.
So when, in case you are using the internal CSS,
Yes.
it does it only mean that you have to start at the header side before it can take effect, or anywhere that you
Exactly.
start it to not take effect? And also the header
Yes.
side, is it like the down part where you put the comment, or you can actually start from the opening side of the header, the opening side of the header, or you just have to come to the down side before you can put in that code? I just want to understand.
Okay. So are you saying that can you put the style
Exactly,
here?
yeah. Yes,
Okay.
and it will work.
It will still work. Yeah, it will still work equally. So you can see when I switch my browser, right, it will still work.
Your projection is off at my end. I don't know if someone is also experiencing that.
I think it's your
Can you see my
network.
screen?
You can see your screen.
Okay. The person who asked that, who was complaining about the projection problem, can you see my screen now?
No, I can't. But I don't know. I don't know if it's from my network or something.
Okay. All right. But whoever asked the question about placing the style before the meta tag, yes, it works. But I think last week, Bright mentioned there are conventions that you follow, right? You don't need to wrap your head around it a lot, right? You could try. Sometimes it's not bad to break your code and then try to figure out what broke your code and make and how to fix it or make it work. You understand? That's what makes you a good programmer. Breaking your code, touching your code and making it break is what makes you a good programmer because it allows you the space to learn. You understand? Exactly. So that was a very good question, by the way. So you can see that it actually works. However, convention details that you place it at the bottom. That is because for when the document is being rendered in the browser, it reads from top to bottom, right? So it means that in this what you're saying, what you're telling the browser is once you start rendering my HTML document, render my styles first before you render any metadata. But remember from the first lesson, we mentioned that the metadata is important for SEO optimization, that's search engine optimization, right? So it's always important that once you render your browser, the first thing to for the browser to grab is the metadata, which is important for SEO optimization before anything else comes. And that is why it is structured that way. Do you get it?
Okay.
So because sometimes you might have a lot of styles, and if your styles take too long to load, you might not get the information that you need from the browser. Do you get it?
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to revert this back. Yes. All right. Any more questions before I move on?
Yes, please. My hand is up. Please, I would like to find out about the metadata in the resources you've given to us. When we look at their code sheets, they really don't have um the metadata. I don't see the metadata over there. I do see the doc type, HTML head. Then it comes to the body. I hardly see the metadata over there. So I'm just asking or wondering. Yeah, is it necessary?
But the metadata is very necessary to always include because, like I said, once you create a HTML on the website, it's not going to sit on your laptop. You're going to render it in a browser, right? And once we advance and we are building more complex websites, you understand the reason behind search engine optimization. Most of the reasons why you see websites, when you search for websites, the reason why you see them appearing first, sometimes because of these little things. Others is because of extra layers such as the paid version, paid optimization, and other extra complicated SEO optimization techniques. But on the basic level, this is what helps you to ensure that your website is always among the first searches to appear. You understand? So it's really very, very important and never to be looked down upon. I understand that maybe some of the resources we shared don't cover it. So just if I forget, just remind me. I'll share another resource with you that explains the metadata in the head tag and its importance. Is that okay?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So that you're welcome. All right. Okay. Any other questions? Is it all clear up to this point? Okay. Okay, good. So in that same vein, it applies to all styles. So if I wanted to give, let's say, good. So let me switch back to my browser. Can you see my browser now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. So let's say these links, right? I'm sure most of you have seen the navigation bar of different websites. They don't usually have the underline or the bullets on the navigation links, and there's a way to remove them using CSS actually. So you're going to do that, right? So let's say we don't want the underline on the links that we are seeing over here, or we don't want the bullet over here, right? Good. So we know that what is causing the underline, and then the bullets
Href.
is actually the anchor tag. So we'll call the anchor tag, right? And then we'll say that we don't want the underline. So we'll say, and to remove the underline, there's a property called text decoration, right? Text decoration. And since we don't want it, we'll say none. Now, this is just by the way, before I continue, right? So I don't know if most of you have observed, but when I'm typing, I have this like sort of like prediction that gives me what's supposed to come next. I don't know if anyone has found it intriguing or is inquisitive enough, but then if you don't have it yet, there are extensions in VS Code that will allow you or to make your coding life easy, right? One of them is called CSS IntelliSense for HTML, right? So you can go to your, if you can see my VS Code on the left-hand side where my mouse is, you can see the Explorer, you can see the search icon, you can see the source control, you can see the run and debug, and you can see extensions. When you click on extensions, search for HTML, CSS support. And when this comes up, you click on install to install it. And what happens is it sort of predicts the CSS styles or anything CSS or the HTML tags or anything HTML that you'll be typing out. It just makes life easy for you when you're coding. Is that clear?
Okay.
Okay. There are other extensions you could look into regarding CSS. I use a lot of CSS extensions. So there's even CSS Peak. Now, CSS Peak allows you to view, when we get to the external CSS, it allows you to view the classes. So for instance, if I call, when we get there, I'll explain better. Don't let me confuse you. But then, yeah, for now, just install the CSS, HTML CSS support so you can at least make your coding life easy. So you can see over here, once I type text decoration, it gave me the options that are under text decoration, the values that are under text decoration property, right? And then we have dashed, we have dotted, we have double, we have line through, we have none, we have overline, we have solid, we have underline. By default, a text decoration for an anchor tag will be on underline, right? But since we don't want it, I'll choose none. Once I choose none, and I switch to my browser, I can see clearly that the line is gone. Can we see that?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, good. Okay. Now, we also need to take away, like I said, take away the bullet points. And sometimes understanding how the HTML structure works will also help you. So, like I said, we know, or we know, or we've come to learn that the underline is caused on the anchor tag. So to remove the underline, you need to apply the CSS style on the anchor tag. Now we also know that, or I know for a fact that the bullet point that's on the list is caused by the li tag, right? So I know that if I want to remove the bullet point, I need to apply the CSS style on the li tag, right? Because if I apply it somewhere else, it might not work. So sometimes knowing the elements in HTML and how they work and where to apply the CSS properties also really helps. You can check out the resources in the classroom to better understand these HTML tags, right? So in our case, I'll call the li tag, right? And then there's a property called list style, and I'll choose none. So this list style is the one that puts the bullet points on the li tag. So because I don't want it, I'll just put list style none, and it takes away the bullet points on the anchor tag, as you can clearly see in my browser, right? And it goes on and on and on and on. If I want to change the color of the anchor tag, I can apply the color property on the anchor tag, right? Just call it white, and reflect in my browser. There are several properties to be able to allow you style your CSS or your HTML document. All right. Before I switch to external CSS, I'll leave the room for any other questions. Yes, I see someone has raised their hand. Yes, Mr. Agbeku, the floor is yours.
Yes. So I've seen when you want to call the name of the element, you put that parenthesis around it. Do you have to put it, or when you just put the nav, it automatically comes?
Oh no, so you have to call it. So remember, I mentioned that you need to call the name of the selector, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, let's say it was the nav, like over here, you call the nav, and then, or let's say, let me bring another. Okay, this H2, right?
Yeah.
You want to style it, you call the selector, which is the H2, then you bring your curly braces. I'm going to write the CSS rule inside it. So you bring your curly braces, and within it, the first element that goes in is the property of the style that you want to call. So if it is, let's say, maybe the font size. So there's a property called font size for changing the font size of the element, right? And I can give it the unit of the font size. So there are values that are say static, and then there are values that come with units, right? So for instance, the font size is the unit, and the base unit that is known across board is the pixels, right? So we measure font sizes by pixels. So I could say the font size should be 5 pixels, right? And it will render it in my browser by reducing the font size to 5 pixels, as you can see over here.
Yeah. Yes, it's drinking size.
Good. So to answer your question, yes, you should always call the selector, introduce the curly braces, and then write the CSS value property in there with the value.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Is that okay? Yeah. All right, you're welcome. All right. Any other questions? Okay. All right. If there are no other questions, I'll move to external CSS, and I'll explain a particular concept over there called the box model, right? So let's do that over there. So for external CSS, that is different from the internal CSS and then the inline CSS. Remember, when we started with CSS, we mentioned that there are 3 ways: the inline CSS, internal CSS, and external CSS. For inline CSS, for the element that you want to style, you call the style attribute, right? Within the style attribute, you call the CSS rule, which is, let's say, the color. I want to give this list style the color, and I'll give it brown. So you call the property, and then you call the value of the property. That's for inline CSS. And then we have the internal CSS. And for the internal CSS, you go into your head tag, you open the style opening tag, style closing tag, and then you define your CSS properties in there. Now, I'll explain the difference between the two, right? Now, one difference between the inline and internal is the inline always has it's like it always has preference over the internal. When I say preference, what I mean is whenever you render in your browser, right, and you have, let's say over here, I had, let me look for a better use case. Good. What will happen when I do this? Remember, the anchor tag has a color of white in our internal CSS, as everyone can see. Now, when I apply another style over here, right, with the color of red. Now, why might I ask? We have two conflicting colors over here. Which one will be applied first? Which one do you think will be applied first?
The internal.
The internal
The
one.
internal they apply first.
The internal one.
Yeah.
Which
The
is
inline
you're
one.
saying,
The inline.
you're saying
The
this will be
internal
applied
one.
first.
Yeah, because
Okay.
it's reading from the top to the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
white one should come
Okay.
first.
Let's check our browser and see which one applies first. Okay. Which one applies first?
The inline.
The inline. Because as you
Good.
said, it has
So
preference over the other ones.
Okay, so inline always has preference over any other style that you declare. That is because even though there is a more document, I get a logic where you're saying it's reading from top to bottom. But even though it's reading from top to bottom, it always give preference to attributes that are declared on the HTML tag than any other attributes that are declared elsewhere. Do you get that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So the inline will always be given preference, and then the next one is your internal, and then the last one will be given preference to is your external, because it's a separate document. Is that well understood?
Please.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good. All right. So now we go to the external CSS. Now for external CSS, oh, sorry, I said there were two. There were two. So the first difference was it gives you the inline has preference or precedence over the internal. And the second one is the internal allows you to pack all your CSS styles in one tag rather than having them. So just for writing clean code of sorts, rather than having your style and repeating the style all over and over again. The internal one gives you the flexibility of sort of packing all your styles into the style tag. So it makes your code cleaner and then separate so that anyone who is reading your code can understand your code. Is that clear?
Please, have you said
Now-
internal or external?
Say again, internal.
All right, okay, all right.
You haven't started external yet. So internal. Now, for the external CSS, as the name suggests, it's external. So it's an external file or a separate file that's separate from your HTML file. And it's similar to the internal CSS in terms of grouping all your styles and sort of packing your styles in one. However, this makes it even more cleaner and even makes you, yes, so for making your code cleaner and making your code more readable, you create a different style sheet called, let's say, the convention is styles dot, and the extension here is .css, like the way we have index.html for a style sheet file, we have styles of CSS or any name that you want to prefer. You want to call your CSS file, and then you add the .css extension, and it creates the CSS file for you. Right, good. Now, once that is done, remember there are two separate files. That's why it's external. So these are two separate files. We need a way to communicate we need a way for them to communicate with each other. And to do that, we need to link our external CSS file to our HTML document. And to do that, we call the link tag. Let me clear all this. And then within the link tag, right, we have an attribute called relationship. As you can see, I told you the last time, once you call a tag and you want to find out what it means, it says this attribute names a relationship of the link document to the current document, right? There are several relationship links that you can link to HTML. One of them is the style sheet. So this relationship is called a style sheet for linking your CSS file to HTML, right? And then, sorry, we have the href. Remember what we spoke about the href from the last time? It's the link that points to, it's the attribute that points to a link. So in this case, we want to point to this CSS style, right? And to point to it, we have to find out where the CSS style is. Obviously, it is within the same project folder we're working in as the HTML document. And from last week, if you remember very well, to call a file that is within the same location as your HTML document, you use a /, you use a full stop and a /, and then it'll give you a list of the items within the same project structure that you call the styles.css. Now, in doing this, we have linked our CSS to our HTML document, which means that any style we declare in our CSS file will automatically be picked up and be reflected in our HTML document, right? So let me use this now as an example. I'm going to cut this from here, and then I'll paste it here. Once I do that, always remember to save your work. As usual, I have my work on autosave. I think the last session or so, I explained the autosave feature. So if you don't want to always save your work, because as time goes on, the project will be growing, and sometimes you might forget to save your work. VS Code has an autosave feature. Once you click on File and you scroll the way down, you can see the autosave feature, and you select it. It will automatically save your work each time you make a change in your VS Code. So now let's see the reflection in our browser. Note that when we go back to our HTML document, there's nowhere we are styling our nav, as you can see. So we hope that at least when we start, this style will be declared in a separate CSS file. It should show in our browser. So we can see that over here. Good.
Yes.
Good. So, like I said, I'll just recap again. To create, first of all, to add an external CSS file to your project, you need to create a separate file with the .css. You can name it anything. I named the styles of CSS, and ensure that it's in the same folder as your HTML file. Once you create that, you have to come to your HTML document or your HTML file, and inside your head tag, you link that CSS file that you created. And to link it, you use the link tag, the relationship attribute with the value of style sheet, the href attribute with the value of the path where the CSS file is found. And once you've done that, it automatically links the two files together such that your CSS attributes or styling can be reflected on your HTML. And once we did that, we were able to style our nav, and then we saw the effect in our browser. Are there any questions from here before I move on? Any questions?
Hello.
Okay.
Please, I have a question.
All right, I'm all ears.
So I want to find out. So in case you are using the external CSS, it means that after you've linked it with the href and all that, and its attributes and all that, before you can actually make you can make the changes, you need to call that particular line item of code that you want to make the changes on, or you want to make the style on, into the file style.css, right? Hello.
I'm sorry, Gordon, could you come again? I lost you in the middle.
Please, can you hear me now? Hello. Please, can you hear me?
Yes. Repeat your question again.
Okay, so
Repeat your
I'm
question
saying
again.
that, yes, I'm asking that in reference to the external CSS, if you want to, after you've linked it with the href and all that, and you've created a file, it means that if you want to, style any part of your web page or any part of your code, you need to call that particular code into the style.css file before it can work, right? So basically, I mean that you are repeating that code inside for you to apply that to apply the styling on it, right?
So you're not repeating if I get you, so you're not repeating the code, you're just calling the selector, right? So in this case,
okay,
in our external CSS, right, we want to style the nav. So remember, in our HTML, the element we want to style is this nav element, right?
yeah.
So we just call that nav element and then we style it. We want to give the background color of brown. So what you're only repeating is the name of the element, which CSS calls the selector.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Okay.
Yes.
So it means that it works
now,
like it works like if I may ask, it works like the internal how we style the internal, but in this case in an external version, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Because I know that with yes, with the inline, you have to actually attach it to that particular line code item before it works. But with the internal, you are attaching it to you're making reference to the tag element for it to work. So okay, sure. Okay, thank you.
Exactly. All right, you're welcome. All right. Okay. Now, sometimes two elements, you might want to style two elements with the same CSS styling, right? So what would happen is you have to repeat that same style. So let's say if I wanted to give, yes, is there a question? Yes, William, Mr. Agbeku. Your W, is it William?
Yeah, it's William.
Okay,
Mr. I think we were stuck.
Please,
we were stuck on the browser. We're stuck on the web. Yeah, on your web. So if you can switch to the VS Code, yeah. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. All right. Good. So I was saying that sometimes you might want to give the two elements the same CSS styling, right? And typically what would happen is, let's say I wanted to give this about me the same background color as the nav. Now, ideally what I've done is call the h2, right? and repeat the same background color styling for the H2. And this will work perfectly. Can we see that?
Yeah, you can see that. I can see that.
Okay. That will work perfectly. However, since we don't want to, there's one thing in coding, we typically want to write less code, right? And make our code more readable and not be repeating ourselves. And CSS makes it easy for us, or HTML makes it easy for us by calling the class attribute, right? Or the ID attribute, like from last week when we were speaking about attributes. So in this same sense, if I want to give the two elements the same styling without repeating my code, I will simply go, let's say we'll start with my H2. Give my H2 the class attribute, right, of let's say color. And for my nav, I'll give it the same class attribute of color. Now what happens here is what I'm telling HTML is anytime, let's say I want to apply the same style to these two elements, right? Go through my HTML document and find out any class that has the same name called color and apply that attribute to it, right? And then now this is implementation in CSS. Now to call a class attribute in CSS, we start with a full stop and then we call the name of the class, which in this case is called color. So once I do that, which is different from the element. Remember with the element, we just call the element name, which is the nav. Or if it was an anchor tag, we just call it the anchor tag. If it was a p tag, we just call the p. But if it's a class, you start with a full stop and you call the name of the class. And then the same rules apply, the curly braces. And in this case, I would have given it the background color of brown. Now, once I save and I look at my browser, you see that those those about 4 or 5 lines of code I had written, I just put that in one line of code by using the class attributes and has applied it to both elements. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Any question? Any questions? Okay, no questions. All right. So I'm going to
I've
switch
got
to
a
the
question,
box.
please.
Okay. All right. I'm listening.
Yeah, Mr. Bernard. Just sorry to take you back again. You know how you changed the bullet and the underline. Kindly recap on that again.
Okay, good. Anyway, how many of us are coding along or following along? Okay. I'll employ you. I'll suggest that after this lesson, right, if you're not coding along, please refer to the video recording and then try to practice whatever is in the video. All right. So let me answer your question. So for the underline and the bullet points, I remember clearly I said that you must first of all know what element that the style you want to apply to should apply to. So for instance, for the bullet points, we've learned or we know that the list tag or the list element comes with an automatic bullet point. Because if you are listing things, even in Excel or even in Word documents, right? Once you start creating a list, it automatically brings the bullet points. So bringing that same perception, right? We know that the list or the li tag comes with the bullet points. Now we don't want that. I want to remove that. The attribute for removing that, first of all, is applying the list style property on the element that comes with the bullet point, which is the li selector or the li tag. And then now, since we don't want it, we put the value of none on the li tag and it takes it away. Is that clear?
Yes, yes.
Good.
Yeah, I've got it
And then
now.
in the same
Thank you.
sense, okay. So in the same sense, you can do the same for the underline. Is that okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so let's move on. So moving on to a crucial part called the box model. Understanding the box model. Good. So there are content, padding, border, and then margins. Right. So imagine any element in HTML as a box. To really imagine it, I'll just go into my code and I'll show you the imagination in real life. So I'm going to place an element in a box. And when I say I'm going to place it in a box, I'm going to put a border around it so that it shows that the element has a box. So for our H2, that's record. Okay. For our H2 in our HTML documents, right? I'm going to put a border around it. And remember, like I mentioned, you call the property and then the value. For borders, there are three elements that go into the value. In the value, the width of the border, the type of border, and then the color of the border. So it's three of them. You can see, but when once you go over it, it shows you the syntax says what? The line width, the line style, and then the color. These three of them. Good. So I want one px solid red. And once I review it in my browser, sorry. What just happened? Interesting. Did I change something here? Let's give me 1 second. Okay. Interesting. This is never happened. Okay. Let me try something else. This works. So is the border not working? Very interesting. Okay. Um. All right. We'll look into it later. But then, I just wanted to show you. We can still use the background color to demonstrate the box model. Great. So, can you see my browser?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. So I started by saying that think of any element in HTML as a box, and to do so, you can either put a background color for demonstration purposes or a border around it. Now, when I put a border around the or a background color around the H2, then the you can see the how I'm portraying the box model, or you can see how much width or height the about me H2 tag is spanning. So you can see that even though when we take away the background color, right? You can see that even though the about me ends somewhere here, right? When we put the background color back, you can see that it doesn't end actually where the about me stops. No, it spans the entire width of the screen that you are on, right? Good. Now, you can also see that within the box, there is some sort of spacing above and then below. And then, like I said, all the way on the side after the me. Now, this shows you how elements within HTML work, right? And it shows you the spacing within these elements. Good. Now, any spacing within an element is called a padding, right? Spacing outside the element is called a margin. I'll repeat that again. Any spacing within an element is called a padding. Now, spacing outside an element is called a margin. I can decide to increase the spacing within this element by applying a padding within it. Let's see if that works. Okay, I'm just use. And now the padding attribute, the padding property, HTML property, is part of the properties that come with the units, right? So remember when I was trying to increase the font size of the H2 previously, I added font size and then 5 pixels. The same way for padding, you can use the pixel unit. And like I said, padding allows you to increase the spacing within an element. So if I call 5 pixels, you should see that the spacing within the element has increased. Right. Now, that is for padding. If I take away the padding, you can see that there's no actual spacing within it. Actually, there is, but I'll explain that later. But then you realize that the spacing has actually reduced, and there's actually maybe close to no padding within the elements. Now, let me demonstrate something else about the margin. I said margin is the space outside the element. So remember the H2 is within a section element, right? I'm going to call this section element and give it another background color so you can demonstrate the margin, right? So I'm going to call this, sorry, that's what's already applying to. Sorry. Let me call this H2 and give it, let's say, a background color. Sorry. Let me do this. Let me briefly explain what a div is. So a div is another element that's sort of like a container that holds other elements, right? So you can see over here, div element has no special meaning at all. It represents its children. It can be used with classes, title attributes to mark up, and so on and so forth. But simply put, a div is like an imaginary container that holds other elements. So because I wanted to apply a background color, I could do that, but then for me to achieve the purpose of explaining better how the box model works, I need to use the container. So a section over here is a type of div, but a special div that is called a section. So it's holding other elements within it. The natural elements that we know, the H1, H2, and so on, the P tags, and so on and so forth, not all of them can hold elements, right? So they cannot be continuous on their own. Okay, so I'm going to call this class, let's say, container. And then in my CSS, I'm going to call the container and then give it a background color of, say, green. Right. Now you can see over here that the blue is gone and the green is now showing. It's not actually gone. It's just sitting on top of the blue. And I'll show you. So remember, this dot about is applied on the section tag, and the dot container is applied on the div tag, which is within the section tag. Now, if I apply a padding of 5 pixels for the blue container, guess what happens? Remember, we said padding applies spacing within the element, right? So initially, it was not showing because, like I said, it was sitting on top of the blue container, and then they are almost the same height and the same width. Not even almost, they are the same height and the same width. But to demonstrate and to see the blue container and the box model, once I brought out the blue color and apply the padding, I can see that I've applied spacing within the blue container. And that's what it's showing over here. Right. Now, same way, if I take away this padding, right, and I want to apply a margin on this green container, that's spacing outside the green container, I'll use the margin property. And if I call a margin and apply the same unit of 5 pixels, it applies margins outside the container. Is that understood? Any
Yeah,
questions
follow.
from here? Okay, any questions from here? Any questions?
Hello.
Yes, hope. Yeah.
Okay, my major problem is how to know which
Mhm.
tags to apply where exactly is actually my problem. I don't know.
Okay. So give me like a typical use case. Let's say this about me. You were saying that
Yeah,
you are confused about the type of attribute or class styling to apply. You are saying,
yes, please.
okay. So give me an give me an example. So let's say you wanted to apply what kind of styling do you want to apply
Let's
and
say
what's
that
making
maybe let's say the div and then the section and all, maybe one of those.
Mhm. So it depends on the context, right? So
Okay.
like I told you, this div is out of the box that allows me to put stuff within it. So it's like a container, right? This section is also,
Okay.
I call this section also like a special div, but it says it's its own purpose. So it's also a container that allows you to hold other elements, right? So it depends on your context. If, let's say, I want to nest certain values within other HTML elements for them to act as containers, I would use a div or I'll use a section. That is why in the previous, in the assignments, right, for instance, this nav, right, it can hold other elements. So it's a special kind of container. You get
Correct.
it? So if you want to style the nav, right, you know which CSS attribute, depending on what you want to do, or the kind of styling you want to do. You can apply the CSS styles as per the structure in your HTML, right? Not all elements can hold other elements, like I mentioned, right? So for
Correct.
instance,
Okay.
like an H2 tag, it can't necessarily hold a P tag because it's not like a special container. You understand? Do you understand? Hello, Hope. Hello, Hope. Okay. Is Hope still there? Anyway, are there any questions up to this point?
Please, sorry, about the CSS. Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
see that when writing the codes, there is no this open tag and all that, but the curly bracket. Why is that I have
Yes.
to step down after every curly bracket? Are you not able to write like we were writing the elements within the tags in the HTML? Are we not able to do that in the CSS? It's like you step down after every curly bracket. I tried it in my own code. If I write the rest of the elements in the curly bracket, it still produces the same result.
Oh, you
I
mean
don't think you understand. If you go
this
to your
way?
style CSS or the top
Can
not
you see my
there's
code?
in the in I think it's still in the index HTML at the top where we were defining the color of the navigation bar and all that.
Here?
Yes. It's like, yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
as you can see, after the list, you step down after the bracket to write the list style. I mean, if you write it even with the black brackets closed, they still produce the same results. It's then I know some are conventional. We are not to ask why, but yeah, if you still do it
Oh, don't
like
worry.
this, it still
So
gives the
this
same
way?
result. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So it's just to, for coding, just to make your code clean and readable, right? I mean, I can write all my styles on the same line this way, but then just to make it more readable and make it more organized and more understandable, because trust me, your code will be growing and you always come back to your code. If you're going to write all your styles on one line and it goes all the way to the end, it's going to be very, very difficult to read and it'll be very, very difficult to understand once it's growing. So it's just the convention to make, and also for your betterment, to make it readable for you and to keep your code clean and organized. Mind you, you might not be the only one coding on a particular project. We'll get to a stage where we'll learn about collaboration or collaborating on the same code with different other people. You might not be the only one writing the code. You get it. So if you follow the conventions, you follow the rule of thumb and keeping your code clean, it's to your own benefit and to whoever you're working with. Is that clear?
Yes, please. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. All right, you're welcome. Any other questions? All right. If there are no other questions, I think we've come to the end of today's class. Um, I'll 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 ensure the recording is available for everyone to access. If you have any troubles or maybe you don't want to voice out and you want to see me later, kindly reach out to me personally and I can clarify certain things for you. Is that okay?
Yes, it is. Thanks so much,
Sure.
Mr. Bernard.
Sure.
I
All
really
right, you're
enjoyed
welcome.
your class.
All right. Enjoy your evening.
Thank,
I'll go through your
thank
assignment
you.
and then grade you guys. All right.
Okay.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye bye.